munhadan esta fanelus in analisa wahasya sinadamami naman malagwa mnentingo yen comprendi kabalis antes de fan mafanyagwi ni timang propusya na informasyon. Iprimet asunto widastiji mampus bula kwentus na tiempo na sinyaha man gaitano después ita autorizan jangin ta sede na umatulay kasi na provision ipapay constitution latis de fanelus na hinaso. Y razón en el eculache, el artículo 12, primera vez como cuentos por Hagun y Dreño en tono. Y pagpugwa fanelus, na provisión y artículo 12, por ma fananan fee simple. 50% tano mo gana di leleng mo, pupedad mo. Kung kailangan na yung 50% jangin parang dispone, debit information permission gini ni publiko sino yung local government ko sinya on dispone itetanan na isom mo. Ipunto mina ispipyap tay manu na sinasita tulay ka na para ta sediam zo mandrenyo ni tano mizo 100%. Wahar sonis siya naman hujungam kita ini. Uno megay necesidad tafafana muna fanelus. Ane sinya un nasebe da na testigo tanomo, por ejemplo, guahaje y familia, guane malongi, proemo, dan sita malafalakaway sa Manila. Tata sa lapigi familia, pues un nakekesebe na tanomo na na testigo gi banko paron azo sa lapi. No tisina ni nayaw ni banko, ni na sa lapi, sa tisina aguri tanomo siya kaso na lati apos mo. Segundo, guaha famagonta siya maniskwela. Kung todo guaha fanelus mamadedesisyon este. Ang managang ipadgonon sa lang na dat, unisisitas ti pa joko appointment na joko tuition, ultimo escalera ipabay na testigo itano, ti malago ibangko acceptas ti. Basta natin ni sasti ang ginunatan, malago mazuli padgon ni ordo na familia ni malongon Pag malagaw na unazuli padgun ni mo necesita sa ninengkanus na tadza, gagi logo. Muli ka dyan gagi bisino. No gagi Amerikas ti naman nananggay padgun, azudo na. Estigi na rason siya, afanilus, na pinaposta, dan tapafana talo mamamayla, ni David itapula. Malasa tanoit onro, ni patafandrenyo, dyan ganesti na pen, ni Joku, dyan na tumungo na. No wala mo na fabetsogo nesti na pen, sinabay hulok, sinabay daggo, usino ba mantina gimanaw. Estegi malago dun ang comprende sa gipagugwa ni uno gen trihamjo 100% drenyo gitano sa Mariana sa nileleng mo private property. Now, the other provision, I go back to English, pertains to the displacement of our people who are in Guam, Hawaii, or elsewhere, American jurisdiction, up to December 31st, 1950. These folks, by what this provision says, cannot own land their parents has given them as a matter of inheritance. And this is an issue that I'd like to ask one of our guest panelists, Mr. Vince Seman, to explain, including Vince, if you can explain also what happens when you lease it or when you sell it, things like that, because I want this thing understood.
Thank you, John. And I believe that Efren also brought up this notion that what constitutes NMD is really a political definition as opposed to a racial or cultural definition. John alluded to Section 805 of the covenant that permits the people, the CNMI, to limit or restrict the alienation of their own feast upon ownership to just supposedly people of the CNMI, or more specifically people who are Northern Marans descent. The covenant allows the government or the people, the CNMI, to gives them the discretion to make their own definitions for three important terms. The first one is what constitutes what defines a person of Northern Marans descent, and what defines a long-term interest, and I believe the third one was, excuse me,
Adoption. Adoption or blood quantum.
And what is an acquisition of property? You know, the restriction is, and let me read Article 12, the Section 1 of Article 12. It says, the acquisition of permanent and long-term interests in real property within the Commonwealth shall be restricted to persons of Northern Marianas descent. So under the covenant, we are allowed under our Constitution to define what's an acquisition, what's a long-term interest, and who exactly are persons of Northern Marianas descent. And specifically defining persons of Northern Marianas descent under the covenant, under Article 12, Section 4, a person of Northern Marianas descent is a person who is a citizen or national of the United States who has at least of 1/4 Northern Marianas Chamorro or Northern Marianas Carolinian blood, or a combination thereof, or an adopted child of a person of Northern Marianas descent if adopted while under the age of 18. Now here's the critical part that you were referring to, John. For purposes of determining Northern Marianas descent, a person shall be considered a full-blooded Northern Marianas Chamorro or Northern Marianas Carolinian if that person was born or domiciled in the Northern Mariana Islands by 1950 and was a citizen of the Trust Territory of the Pacific before the termination of the trusteeship with respect to the Commonwealth. Mm-hmm. Now we have a lot of relatives who may not have been here or present in the NMI, but still come from lineage who are bona fide persons of Northern Marianas Chamorro, Northern Marianas Carolinian blood. If they were no longer here by 1950, then they fall out of that that definition, regardless of the fact that they are as much Chamorro or as much Carolinian as you or I. So that really cuts off a whole lineage of Chamorros and Carolinians just because they happen not to be on this certain place on a different date. And in fact, it doesn't even limit that you only have to be Chamorro Carolinian. You know, you have a few examples of other Micronesians who were present here by 1950, even though they don't have any bona fide Chamorro Carolinian blood, but if they were, here in the Northern Mariana Islands in 1950, and there were trust territory citizenships, such as the Yappies at that time were trust territory citizenships, the Chukis, the Marshallese were all trust territory citizenships. So you actually have a few Chukis, Yappies, Marshallese, I believe even Pohnpeians, who, without ever having been Chamorro or Carolinian descent, they qualify to be persons of Northern Marianas descent just by the fact that they were domiciled here in the Northern Marianas. So it's kind of odd, or it's ironic that you cut off one segment of bona fide Chamorros or Carolinian, legitimate Chamorros or Carolinians, but then you still let in other races. And I'm not about to exclude these other races because we have to comply with the definition, but it still kind of calls into question that this whole issue of defining what the Northern Marianas descent is really just drawing a line in the sand, if you will, and say everyone who happened to be on this side of the line at this time is an NMD. I don't care where you came from. As long as you're on this side of the line, you're NMD. So those are kind of some of the conflicts that we have to try and deal with, and that we shouldn't deal with by having to continue with Article 12, John.
And John, I'm going to add to what Vincent said. Another contradictory or conflict is adoption versus a person that is of offspring of mixed marriage. Say, for example, that Vince is married, or say Joe is married. Joe is an NMD, marries a person of non-NMD. Their offspring is automatically 50% NMD. However, Jose and Maria, who are both NMD, adopts a child from, say, Korea. That child becomes 100% NMD. So now you've got a child that is 50%, has a 50% blood Chamorro Carolinian by the marriage, but yet he's 50%